Hey, I'm Darian Rosebrook. I'm a senior designer working directly on design systems at a company. And today I want to walk you through a tool that I created for Figma. This tool is a tool that lets you generate a dynamic accessibility first color palette for your design systems within Figma. So using key colors, you can target specific contrast ratios against a chosen background color in color space. These constraints will generate a color palette based on that key color or key colors. You can then choose to test and find out more information within Figma, or you can set these color styles based off of the results that you get. So this tool is something that wouldn't have been possible without the work that Nate Baldwin from Adobe did, specifically on a tool called LeonardoColor.io. So Leonardo Color is quite literally what I had described, but external to Figma. Where I saw the disconnect was having to test and play around with these color palettes directly in the tool that we're using to design our UIs or design systems, etc. But a lot of the work that they did was able to be ported over to this plugin and allow us to do this work directly within our tool. So before I get into too much more about this, I want to show a little bit about my journey within color in UI. So a few years ago, I'd been working on a browser, one that released quite recently, new version of, and we were working specifically on our developer tools. I was tasked with finding a good, accessible color system that we could use in tandem with data visualization, create a palette that we can make semantic color choices from. So as I was doing some explorations, I initially took up here on the left the palette that was originally proposed, and then the current colors that were already there. The current colors, you can see down the middle, the accessibility ratio that it has against our key background. So some of these are as bright as like 1.36 and then as dark as 11.05 in our system. That varies wildly, and there are content guidelines for data visualizations, which are graphical representations of data, to be 3.1 at least to the background. Because these colors were also being used for text, I needed to make sure that the text itself was legible as well. So the first thing that I had noticed is the original proposed palette looked very muted and dull. And what happened was a lot of these colors were a lot harder to discern from each other when used in the context of data visualization. So I'd done a bit of work to try to target very specific contrast ratios. You can see my first update here. Everything tries to very closely hit a 4.5 to 1 contrast ratio. And what I did was I tried to pull the vibrancy as high as I could for each color, but this created a lot of work where I had to manually go into the color picker and slide around my little dot within the UI window to come up with a very specific color that I needed to get. By the end, some of these colors changed greatly, some of them changed very little, but I'd done at least a decent job at working myself into a new color system for the representation of this data. It got me thinking, though, like, why is it so hard to come up with good-looking, accessible colors? Well, to go through that, I actually went and mapped the colors that we have on our color wheel. So I spread out evenly around a circle the different hues through the rainbow. So we got red, orange, yellow. Basically goes all the way through a rainbow. and I put the saturation as high as it goes at 100%. I put the lightness at 50%, and this would give the brightest, most saturated colors for each of the colors that we have in the system. What I then did is I went and turned these colors into grayscale, and then I went and looked at the actual lightness value that each of these colors have. So these colors, you'll see that over here at yellow we have 89. Down here at blue we have 11. So the brightest color that we have at 89 is yellow. Its inverse over here on this side with blue ends up being the darkest value. So even at their most saturated values, these colors are still perceived at different lightness values. If we were to actually map that on a 2D scale here, you can see here we've got a bunch of peaks and valleys. So the peaks up here, we have yellow and blue respectively, but the only way that we can get these colors at the top darker is to drop down their luminance, or essentially add black to them. And then the only way to get these colors at the bottom to go lighter is to add white to them. We could also try to cheat a little bit and move through the color spectrum and hue shift some of these colors. And I'll give an example of how that works in just a moment. But essentially, we were kind of stuck with the colors that we got. So after a lot of exploration around this, I realized that 2D space is really a limitation of trying to show this color. So I took the idea of having our hues around a color wheel, our lightness values going up and down, and together I kind of mixed those together to create this look of a color sphere. So if you think about it, the most saturated values are going to be those around the edge of the sphere. And then the brightest values are going to be white at the top. The darkest values are going to be black at the bottom. And then as we move to the middle, we get less saturated and towards gray. And if we think about it, RGB, if we looked back at our color scale up here, red, green, and blue are the darkest values in each of these valleys. And then cyan, magenta, and yellow are the brightest. So if we think about that direction, RGB, you have to pull up to get brighter colors. And for our CMYK, we have to go down to get to the darker colors. It's kind of funny to think that our color space is truly limited to that. So where does that fit with our adaptive color system plugin and Leonardo? So I'd found Leonardo Color as a way for me to very specifically target contrast ratios. You can see here we've got 3, 4, and 5.5 here. Through its tool, it spits out contrast-specific colors based off of a key color. And here you can even take a look at the charts and a 3D model of this space. So you see here, this is actually quite literally what I was explaining. So in order to get a brighter value of this blue, we have to move closer to white. And then to get a darker color here, we need to move closer to black. So because of the work that Nate Baldwin had done in working with adaptive color systems, I was able to take a lot of this data and move it into the tool that I'll demo here for you. So let's get rid of these and let's pull up our plugin. So adaptive color palettes. in a design system, usually you have a very light value and a very dark value. I like to set those as my key colors. Let's say the brightest color that I have is pure white at FFF, and I'll say the darkest color that I have in my system is 1A, 1B, 1C. So the base color, let's say our base color, which is going to be our background color, is actually FA, FA, FA. And you'll see here, because of the color space that we chose, and I'll have some resources that Nate Baldwin had actually put together to explain some of these color spaces. The 1-to-1 contrast ratio is going to be the same color as our background. Here we can add other contrast ratios that we want to target. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's say that we have 10 colors in our system. Now, if we were to keep this on a linear curve like this, the contrast actually grows diminishingly from each other. So 1 to 2 is a very sharp contrast, and then 2 to 3 starts to level out until the last changes are very imperceptible. What we can do here, if I want to set my bottom limit at 1.15, so this will be the first color that we target, you can see the color updates here, and then let's say 14 is going to be the highest contrast ratio we want against that color. We can distribute these contrast swatches so that each step is now the same contrast level from each other, rather than diminishingly working against the contrast that you're trying to go for in the system entirely. So we have a neutral color ramp here. Let's say we just want to test these swatches for now. Here, it'll print the colors in this system directly onto the canvas for us to take a look at. So here you can see we've got neutral 100, so neutral, the name of our system, and 100. And then each of these colors have their hex code and their HSL value. And then for accessibility, I'll show you the 1.15, its contrast ratio against your background that we targeted, and then whether it's accessible against large text or small text. So as we start to move through the system, you'll see here our 4.56, that of course is AA accessible against our background for small text, and AAA accessible with large text against our background. So you can see this start to update as we start to move past 7 for AAA on small text. So if we wanted 7, we would have to go with our neutral 800. Let's say I don't actually like these names. Instead of neutral 100, let's step from 10 to 100 here. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100. We can print this again. It'll give us now the updated colors here. So we got this, that's good. If we close our plugin and open it one more time, what you'll see here in the system, what you'll see here is we've essentially started over from the beginning. However, what we can do here at the bottom of our color ramp, I've created a reference code. We can copy this, paste this directly into our system here, and set colors. And this will have us pick up right where we left off, neutral all the way through here. Cool, so we got a few colors. Let's set this over here for now. We want to start bringing in colors. Let's say we have a brand color here, and our brand color is going to be kind of an indigo purple-ish color. As soon as you put in a new key color into the system, it'll start to update this color ramp with that space. So based off of the settings that I have here, I can actually call this indigo, and we can test the swatches directly on our page here. Comparing these two values from each other, you can see that the colors from the key color that we had and the original neutral ramp, these colors in each of these stops are nearly identical in contrast ratio. So we got 1.85 and 1.84. It'll be very hard to get that exact because each color has its own limitations in each of the color spaces that we check against. So if you wanted to, we could change this to something like LCH, which will try to maximize the chroma or the saturation / hue to be the brightest it can be or most vibrant it can be. We could use lab, which is another uniform space, which actually brings in a little bit more color here. So let's actually get rid of that and we'll use lab instead for our color space. Cool. Say that we like this color ramp that we had. We can now set our styles. And a thing to note is that setting styles will override existing styles of the same name. So if we already have indigo in our system with these specific color stops, I just want you to know it will update those colors. That can actually be a very good thing. So let's see. Let's add a new color to the mix, and you'll see really quickly. I should mention this, that each one of these colors, when you set it, it'll have the color name, its hex code, its accessibility ratio, and its ratings directly in the description. So as you go into the system and try to pick one of these colors, if you hover over it at all, you'll see that all of this data is available. So when people are going through your system and picking a color, you'll get to see directly the details on whether or not this color is accessible, what its ratio is, what its color is, what its name in the system. So I figured that was a good thing to add for everybody there. All right, so we've got indigo. Let's add ourselves a magenta color. Well, actually, I didn't have to do that, but because we can edit each color individually. So let's add magenta as FF00FF, and this is going to be our magenta ramp. So magenta, and let's move this over, and let's test our swatches one more time. So now you can see each of these colors against each other still look fairly uniform across each stop. So 50 is going to look fairly the same across whatever colors we have. All right, so let's set these styles as well. You'll see magenta shows up here on the right, all with that same data that we had before. But now, let's say we didn't like the magenta we have. We're going to take this frame and we're really quickly going to change it to this color. So let's say we wanted to change magenta in our system and we wanted it to be a little bit more muted. This is too bright against some of the colors we have. So we can change that. We can set styles again. I mean, if you want to test it first, that's probably smart, but we can set these styles and it'll update anything tied to the color ramp that we have here. So any updates you make to the color ramp will cascade through all of the UI designs that you've created along the way. So lastly, you don't have to use just one key color. So if I wanted to do this with yellow, yellow is a very hard color to get accessible, and I'll show you why. So if we go FFDD222, this will give us the yellow color that looks good at the top, but as you start to get closer to the bottom of the color ramp, it starts to get really muddy and kind of gross. So if we were to print this out, yeah, we get a yellow color. It kind of works pretty much the same as the rest of the colors, but I really want to round out the saturation down here. So earlier when I had talked about hue shifting, you'll see here we have 51 over at hue. If we wanted to change this just by 10, give it kind of a warmer tone down here, let's drop the saturation or the lightness value. We'll keep the saturation at 100 and we'll drop lightness to 25. What you'll see is that this ramp now updates with the bottom half of that kind of getting a warmer honey tone at the bottom. So let's call this yellow. You might actually see too, I forgot to change this here, but if I print this swatch next to the other, you'll see this correctly is yellow now that I've changed that up here. We can set these styles in the system as well. And now we have all of these colors within our color ramp, which we can now start to feed into more semantic tokens. Say I want to use this 4.58 for link color. So now all I need is the hex code from this, and then I can set my own color style here now. Let's get the plugin out of the way. Let's do text and text link for the style that we have here. Now, I could update the description, say text link is tied to Indigo 60. There may be smarter plugins that happen to tie semantic tokens like this together, and it's actually an idea that I have as well. But now you know that anytime you pick one of these colors on your color ramp to use, each one of these is specifically targeted for accessibility in the system. So AA for small text, AAA for large. We know that it's going to hit 4.5 as long as it's against the backgrounds in our application. So lastly, if you ever do want to, you can check out this color ramp on Leonardo, and this will give you the exact same results, at least with this current iteration of each tool. It'll give you the exact same results that we have within the Figma plugin, which will allow you to take a look at the charts. And since we used lab, that's better to take a look at. You can see our 3D model of this, and let's go back to the lab to show quite literally we're going to the most saturated on the edges and then working our way back to the top to get good looking perceptually even color ramps in our system. If you have any questions on how to use this tool or want to geek out more, definitely reach out to me at Darian Rosebrook on Twitter, or you can take a look at the Figma plugin and leave comments there as well. If you find any bugs, definitely use the GitHub repo, and I can do my best to help out where it's needed. I'll have a link in the description as well for any of the resources that I've mentioned here, and just hope that y'all have fun with the plugin, and hopefully this is useful for everybody working on design systems, specifically those who are looking for accessible color systems for their designs. Cool. Thanks, everyone.